Saturday, February the 10th, and you are tuned in to Clue 1 of the Fort Wayne American Sewing Guild Mystery Quilt 2024. My name is Lisa Merkel, and behind the camera doing the taping is Marilyn Morgan, our president.
Hello.
She's going to try to keep me on the straight and narrow today.
Wish me luck.
Yeah, it's a full-time job. Okay, so this is Clue 1. We are working with jelly rolls this time. The first quilt I did for you, we did 5-inch squares, our charm packs. The second quilt we did was the Carpenter Star with the big 10-inch squares. And then this quilt, we're using another pre-cut, we're using jelly rolls. And I was just telling Marilyn, as I was thinking about jelly rolls this morning, there's different kinds of jelly rolls. They're kind of like belly buttons. You have either an innie or an outie on your jelly rolls. Sometimes when you get a jelly roll and they've got the perforated or edges on them, you need to measure your jelly rolls because some of your jelly rolls are 2.5 inches out to the very point on each side of the pinking. Now, other jelly rolls have the pinking, but they are over 2.5 if you measure from end to end to the pinking. I found that out the hard way as I was trying to put my pieces together for this quilt. They didn't want to match up really good. So I measured, and my background squares measure 2.5 to the inside of the pinking. My fabric, my other jelly roll with my prints, measures 2.5 to the very outside. So when I'm putting these together, I have the background fabric will stick out. It looks like it's bigger because it's bigger than what my printed square is. So I had to keep that in my head in order to put this together so that my blocks didn't come out wonky. Ask me how I know this. I've torn some out because they were wonky, and I ended up, to make my life easier, especially on the first part of this, I took my background squares and I trimmed off my little pinked edges because my brain liked it easier. It worked better for me, and I felt like I was getting better squared up blocks. Okay, so to assemble what I call a sub block. This quilt block is 4 blocks in one to make the large block. So this is what I call a sub block. And you have cut and cut and cut some more and cut 20 tons of 2.5-inch squares, some print and some background. So the first step is we are going to take a 2.5-inch printed square with a 2.5-inch background square and line these up and sew them together. And we're doing front right side to right side, which with this background, this white background fabric, I've looked at it 6 ways to Sunday, and I can't tell what is right side and what is wrong side. And I get a little anal about my stuff lining up, so I fiddle around with it quite a bit. Okay, as you notice, I've put the seam tape on my machine. I never had it on until I started doing this project, and I found a need for it, and I will show you why this will come in handy in one of the other steps. But the first thing we're going to do is sew this together.
Are you going to speak to the seam allowance?
Oh, of course. Anytime you're quilting, it's always a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that's what, between the red line, the red line there is my needle, and the blue line there is what I've been following with my fabric, and that is a 1/4 inch.
Thank you.
So now, okay, you can finger press that open. There's your first block. Now, in order to make sure that the rest of your block stays square, just for general principles, because when I first started this project with the pinked edges that were a little on the wild side, this should be finish up at 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Am I good or what? That is at 4.5. Okay, so we're going to do one of those. Now our next step is we're going to snowball. You're going to take one of your 4.5 inch strips, rectangles, and take one of your little 2.5, and we're going to make snowballed corners on this. Okay, the snowballed corner on this, and the way I remember this is the little piece. So little goes to the left, L and L. So you're going to, this is why I bought the seam tape. Trying to snowball corners, you can take and mark your corners with a pen if you choose to do that. Mark them across and sew on the line. I didn't like that. I didn't want to stop and have to draw a ton of lines. So I got the handy dandy little seam tape in a 1-day delivery from Amazon, and my life has been much easier. So I'm going to position the one corner underneath my foot here. I have the other corner down here on the red line. Keep my point all the way through on the red line. And like I said, it's to the left. My tail, my colored fabric is to the left of my needle. Okay? Now see what that did? Wouldn't you know it?
Oh, we have real life adventures.
We have
here.
yes. And this has happened to me periodically.
So we need a header, or what do you call it? That's
No.
not what they're called.
Yeah, that's what a leader. I think
leader,
they call
that's
them a
it.
leader.
Yes.
I don't do that because if I'm paying good attention to what I'm doing and not trying to talk and do this at the same time, which is kind of like walking and chewing gum, and I can't do that either. Then, and Jack and I have really had a pretty good time putting these blocks together. This was a new adventure for me too. I can't see what I'm doing. If I don't get that right up underneath my presser foot at the right spot, this is what we do. It tries to suck it right in.
Okay, let's try this again.
All right, let's get this end right down, this point right on the red line. Let's make sure this time that I have got my foot up and my tail is to the left, so I'm snowballing this the right direction, because that's important. See, that's how it's supposed to work. It's not supposed to get stuck in there. Okay, now see, we'll cut that off, but by using this and keeping my eye on this as it fed through and keeping that corner, then I should have, you know that goes, I should have a pretty decent snowball on that one. Now, we're going to take a 6.5 inch patterned strip, and we're going to snowball a corner of this one as well, but this gets snowballed the opposite direction. So the little, your tail goes to the left. The big one, your tail's going to go to the right. And if you do them the wrong way, then you have to tear them out because the block won't go together right. Ask me how I know that. if it's been done wrong for this block, I have done it.
And just to be clear, Lisa's the one that picked out this pattern.
I did.
Yes.
I have looked at this pattern for several years, and I just love it. I love the way it lays out. I think it's a really sharp block. And I would look at the pattern and figure, and I thought, no, it's too hard. It's too hard for me. Now it's 3 years later. I'm still thinking it might be too hard for me. But hey, we're getting there. Okay,
It's
so.
not hard, ladies, trust me.
No,
If I
it's
can do
not.
it, you can do
It's just more steps than what we have done before to get a block. The other ones have been, they went together quicker, less sewing. Yeah, more, little simpler. Okay, so this is what you're going to need for your first sub block.
Oh, wait a minute. You need that 4.5 inch white strip.
I know. I'm trying to figure out what I did with him. I hit him. Oh, there he is. There he is. Okay, so.
I will edit that out. Okay.
All right, so you have your very first piece here that we put together. You have snowballed these two, and you need a 4.5 inch white background strip. And this is going to make your sub block. Okay? Before we go any further with this, to put this block together, we have to trim. We're going to have to trim off our little snowballs. Okay? So this one here, and this is my handy dandy little favorite ruler of all times. This is a Missouri Star. It's 2.5 inches wide, and it is 8 inches long. And I have this little sticky handle I got there as well. And I use this thing all the time. So I'm going to use my little 1/4 inch mark on there, and I'm just going to trim that snowball off of there. See how I did that? Easy peasy. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Make sure that when you're trimming on the outside, that you don't, if you trim over here, you've just,
Got to cut a new block.
yeah, you're going to have to make a new block. I will tell you that you do have enough fabric with your 2 jelly rolls that you can add 1 more row to this quilt and make it bigger, because that's what I'm doing. I'm adding 1 more row to it. So, but anyway, so don't throw that fabric away that you had left, and don't, throw it in a bin yet, because you might decide you want to make a bigger quilt and add another row. Okay, so we are going to go to the ironing board here real quick, and we're going to press these. Okay, I'm green. Alrighty. All right, so we're going to take this here and we're going to press this open, and I'm going to press with my seam to the dark side so that you don't see the leftover seam here in your white. And these, I'm going to set the seam, and I'm rolling them over this way because I also don't want the seam to show on the white portion. All right, see, you don't see any seam there.
Any shadow.
Yeah. Your excess.
We have a sign around somewhere. Did you hang yours in here, pressed to the dark